We're going to try to show you how to sharpen a blade. We've got a diamond hone that we'll start out with here. So if you look on the edge of your blade, and you'll see that it is ground originally to an angle. Most of the time you're going to want to keep that same angle. And so when you put your blade on your hone or on a stone, whichever one you use, if you match that angle and keep it the same, and you pull that blade along there, and then as you get down to where your blade curves, you're going to rotate that blade where the cutting edge stays in the direction of travel, and you just work it down like that. On the other side, you match your angle, and you turn your knife a little bit to keep that cutting edge square with the direction of travel. And as you work that blade down, you can kind of feel of it. If you work it down with the right stones, you can pull it down to where you have a wire edge, and then you'll have to buff that off or work it down to get rid of the wire edge, because it tends to bend. It won't give you a strong edge. So the trick to making a knife and stone work is to keep that angle consistent. And you usually are going to work one side 3 or 4, sometimes maybe 5 strokes, and then an equal amount of strokes on the other side. As you're working it down, you can look and see it'll show up. It'll be brighter where you're working it across the stone, and you can look and see if you have your angle consistent and matching the old original angle. I don't usually like to put a whole lot of pressure on my stone. And even if you have a stone that's maybe a little more coarse than what you want, if you keep the pressure pretty light, you can still put a pretty fine edge on one. Once you've used a hone or a stone that's pretty coarse, and you want to finish that the edge up, if you go to, like, this stone here is a hard Arkansas stone, it doesn't cut near as fast as obviously as your more coarse stones or your hones. When you pull your knife blade across it, it doesn't feel like it's even doing anything, but it's cutting just enough, and it's polishing that edge. So the more polished it is, after you have a decent amount of sharpness on there, the more that you use that hard stone, then the more polished that edge is and the sharper it'll be. So one thing that you will probably run into is, as you're sharpening that, right up here at the point, you may not have it just as exactly as you want it. And so if you take and just work that point down, you can get it where you have a good sharp point, and it's sharp all the way out to the very tip of that point. And if you don't have that part sharp, and then you go to skin something, it's hard to get that started, because you'll be sharp back here but not out here at the very edge of your point. So as you sharpen them, work that point down to where it suits you, where it's good and sharp. So this stone here is pretty small, but it's good just for a pocket stone for dressing something up. It's an Arkansas stone, but it's a Ouachita, Arkansas. It's coarser than the hard, and you may even be able to see that it's more aggressive than the hard. So if you start out with either a hone or a softer, more coarse stone, then you can get your edge well started, and then switch over to your Arkansas stone. This little hone here is a diamond honed also, and one side's coarse and one side's fine. So if you have something like that in your pocket and you need to dress a blade up in the field, you've got both sides. But if you're sharpening at home, it's hard. I think it's hard to beat an Arkansas stone and a soft and a hard Arkansas stone. But they do take maybe a little more work, not as fast as some of the other stones. If you have like this is an older one. It's a Lansky Sharpening Set, and the nice thing about these is it has different positions for your stone, and so it's easier to keep your angle straight, and you put whichever stone you want in there. This set came with a coarse stone, a medium stone, and a fine stone, and you simply put them in the hole that gives you the right angle. You can put it on there and watch it to see which hole you need, or you maintain the desired angle on the blade. And with your natural stones, your Arkansas stones, you need to use a little bit of oil, or you can use water, spit sometimes if you add to. Doesn't take a whole lot. And again, you're going to stroke that stone once you figure out what your angle you want down the blade. If you pull your stone from front to back as you're moving it down the blade, and it sharpens the blade. So depending on how dull the knife edge is, you might want to start out with the coarse stone. If you're just dressing it up, you could just use go with your fine stone to begin with. So no matter which of these you're using, the most important thing to remember is to keep that angle consistent. If you hold your blade flat like that, you can put a real sharp edge on it, but it won't be as strong. And so for a razor, it'd be all right, but for a knife that you're going to work with and skin, you want to keep a decent amount of angle on it. So if you go to find stones, you want to start sharpening your own knives. We don't have hardware stores like we used to, and stones, good stones have gotten hard to find. You probably end up having to order some. If you wanted natural stones and you get a Ouachita Arkansas and a hard Arkansas, you can pretty well get by with two stones. Some of the other sharpening systems like the Lansky come with usually 3 different stones, and if you wanted to use some of the belt systems or the wheels, the belts have different grits. The wheels, usually they'll just have one coarse one, and then one which just uses jeweler's rouge to finish it. You put that on the wheel and you finish it. But the idea is the same. When you pull your blade across there, you have to match that angle. You have to keep that angle consistent. So especially with any of the powered tools that you might run onto, you want to be sure you don't use too much pressure, and you want to keep the blade moving or you'll overheat it in a hurry. So even with a small stone though, you can sharpen a pretty good sized blade, and keeping the angle consistent is again key to getting a decent edge on there.